If I get into trouble, I'll blame you, both of you. Good evening, everybody. It's wonderful to see you here tonight. Whilst there are other things going on, they're losing, by the way, so don't worry about it, okay? Just concentrate on the lecture tonight, okay? Well, monkey business. If only the monkeys could talk, that would be good, wouldn't it? If I asked that monkey, are we related? Definitely no. Let's look at it. I know that the topic is extensive and I'm limited in my time, so I'm just addressing a number of things. I'll up the pace from time to time and you'll have to do your best to follow me. It's really about intelligent design, if you like, or are we dealing with accidental intelligence? The previous evolutionary theory, now I have a reason why I put that like this, and I'm going to explain that to you. 10, 20, 30 years ago, you would deal with these facts. If you wanted to believe in evolution, that both inorganic and organic matter develop spontaneously through fortuitous, random interaction, it just happened. It just happened. Of course, there was a suitable supporting environment for the development of the matter as it developed in obviously a biological appearance. Natural development from simple to complex. That's what we accepted. That is what was believed. From one basic kind of organism to another. That was it in jest. And if we keep reading here, pre-existence of primary matter and energy. I want you to follow this. As an evolutionist, you would have to accept, you would have to believe in eternal matter. And I'll also prove you'll have to believe in eternal energy. Unless you do, you have nothing to go on. Because unless it was there throughout, from the very beginning, whatever that stands for, unless that is so, something caused it to be into existence. Now there's your problem. As an evolutionist, you must believe in the miracle that matter and energy were always there. That's it. So pre-existence of primary matter and energy, you have to believe and explain a chemical evolution. You will have to accept a spontaneous generation of life. I'll come back to that point because I know many of the eminent evolutionists that I've personally spoken to, they don't believe this anymore. They don't. And the reason is the knowledge that we have of the complexity of the most basic forms of life. There is no such thing as simplicity. Spontaneous generation of life. A biological evolution. And when we look at the biological evolution, formation of complex biochemicals from simple inorganic compounds. In other words, we have a development, we have a evolution in the chemical world where there is an arrangement and a rearrangement into the molecules that we ultimately will need, molecules that must become self-replicated, that must have a differentiation to the point where it becomes an organized organism, even in the simple form of a cellular structure. Organization of these biochemicals into a living cell, that is so mind-boggling difficult that this concept is not anymore argued by evolution. The ones that do are behind their times. And tonight I'm going to prove this to you, because I get it from them. subsequent development of the elementary cell into complex organism, and each successive step following as a natural consequence of innate properties of matter. Have a look at this. This is current evolutionary theory. If you now discuss evolution with evolutionists, they will start with a living organism. Do you understand what I just said? They do not start with matter, how it organized itself chemically, then came somehow to be in the forms of protein chains that were conducive to the formation of a cellular structure. They don't discuss that. They start with a biological cell with the capacity of replication, self-replication. Can you see how we have changed now? We have bypassed, it's like this. If I say to you, I come from Holland, and you believe me, you can tell by the accent. And if I say to you, I swam my way here, I came swimming. All I did, the boat came into the harbor, I was stupid enough to jump off the boat and swim the last 100 meters. Would you believe me that I said I swam to Australia? Well, in a way, technically I did. But I gotta confess the facility of the boat. What we're doing here, we're denying the boat. All we talk about is the last 100 meters, and even that cannot be explained. There is no evidence for. I tried to be an evolutionist. But I had to give it up. I didn't have enough faith. That's the problem. I'm going to explain this to you. Have a look at this. Panspermia is a belief system that is now embraced by quite a large section of evolutionists, not all. And it basically believes that the universe, space out there, can contain and support biological life in one form or another. Well, I would dispute that. From observation, that is not likely. Because biological life as we know it would perish. But there may be certain circumstances, they say, that could be preserved in many places or throughout the illimitable space. What it teaches is this, that somehow there is a traveling in space of portions, well-protected cells inside some form of some cocoon of protection. We've never seen any of it. By observation, we're not aware of any of it, but it could be, they say. If that is what you want to believe, okay. I need evidence. Thank you very much. I would need the evidence. And that does not get, in fact, I'll tell you what it does do. It sounds like a probable solution. I've had this thrown at me many times, but I want you to have a look what it says. Panspermia is not meant to address how life began. It only tells me it came from somewhere. Are you with me? Yes. Only the method that it may cause its sustenance, in other words, a perpetuation of life in the universe, at best. And it is highly improbable. I would say impossible. Exogenesis is another form where you believe that somehow the life form I just spoke about, the basic cellular replicating organism, life on Earth was transferred from elsewhere in the universe. In other words, it was brought here. Maybe it was seeded by a superior civilization somewhere out there. Sounds plausible? Now you got a problem. Now I'll tell you what your problem is. You only make it worse. You only make it worse. This is basically an artist's impression of our solar system. Now you know that we are about a third planet away from the sun. Do you know what the temperature is in space away from the sun? Anybody? It's minus 273 degrees Celsius, called 1 Kelvin or Kelvin. That's the temperature. That is a killer for biological life. That's beside, of course, the cosmological radiation. Not protected, unprotected, organic life as we know it perishes. Have a look at this. Let's see which of our planets might be a candidate. I tell you what, it wouldn't be Mercury because the side to the sun is 400 degrees Celsius. The other side is minus 200 degrees Celsius. Venus has an atmosphere that is almost 96, 97 times the atmospheric pressure as that we have here. It's carbon dioxide. There's no way there's life there. And it's also very hot, 480 degrees Celsius. So we will find nothing on Venus. We know we're on planet Earth. You go to Mars, 20 degrees Celsius, bearable. That's the side that faces the sun. But the side that's away from the sun, is minus 140 degrees Celsius, and it rotates. It almost takes a year to rotate. No possibility of life. What they got back, what they have discovered, what they got back from the moon, what they have discovered from Mars, the samples, the rocks, it's sterile. There is no form of life. It cannot and could not have sustained in the past life. Jupiter, I won't even discuss. Nobody would suggest that life could ever existed in Saturn, Uranus, Neptune. None of them could have supported life. So what it means is that we are looking for a planet where that other civilization comes from, that seeds the basic form of life here. The nearest planet, by estimation, is 10.5 light years away. Now you have a problem. You've got to find a transport that starts to be compatible with the speed of light. There's no such thing. How do you preserve its life? How do you get it here? You can see the suggestion that it has come from somewhere else by way of a seedling and then it just evolved. That suggestion only adds to the problem, and your additional problem is the one of transportation. Can you see that? Right, okay. I can't believe that, and so I don't. There are two forms of evolutionary thinking. Atheistic says there is no God. You might even go down the track by simply saying there is no higher intelligence in the universe. We're it. There is no God, there is no creator, therefore you don't owe anybody any answerability. The most popular evolutionary thinking is theist evolutionary thinking. Did you know that? Let me explain this to you. Theist evolution says there is a God. You can believe in God and you can believe in evolution. Now let me give you some facts. Let me give you some facts why this is so popular. About 7 billion people around the planet, is that correct? Yeah? Over 1.2 billion are Roman Catholics. It is official doctrine of the Roman Catholic Church, and I can give you the quotations, but I won't, but I'll give them to you if you ask me for it. They believe that the story of Genesis is metaphorically meant to be understood. I've never had an explanation of the metaphorical character of Genesis 1, too literal for me. They believe that evolution is a fact. And God used the process of evolution to bring it about. And the variation of the various theist evolutionists are absolutely incredible. But 1.2 billion or more believe what I just said. All our long-age creation over millions of years, they accept it. They accept it. And it clearly does not correspond to Genesis 1 and 2, does it? In other words, God, he begins in the Bible. If you look at his word, if you were to look at this word, and I see the statement here, and I go to Genesis 1 verse 1, and I read that magnificent statement, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. So God is telling me that he created the heaven and the earth, and if I read further, it is in 6 literal days. He's lying to me. He's lying to me. Because according to Roman Catholicism, it took millions of years. He did it through the process of evolution. If I can't believe God here in Genesis 1 and 2, well, why should I believe the rest? Why should I? Why should I? Now, I would like to talk about this topic a lot longer than I just do. But let me just mention one thing very briefly. Jesus gave expression and voiced his perception and belief and understanding and conviction that God created the heavens and the earth. He accepted totally, fully, unconditionally Genesis chapter 1 and 2. If Jesus made a mistake in believing that this planet was brought about, and all the life in it, it was brought about over millions of years, and he mistakenly believed it was in 6 literal days, then who was he? He couldn't have been the anointed, the one filled with the Holy Spirit, the Spirit of truth, could he? No, he couldn't have been. He couldn't have been the Son of God, surely, could he? No, he couldn't have. If evolution is a fact, then the rest of the Bible, and I don't know what you will do with the prophecies, I've got no idea how you will explain away the 100% accuracy of the prophecies. You'll have a job on your hand, but you would have to disbelieve everything that there is in the Bible. That's how important it is. That first statement has I always like to quote it in the Hebrew because it has that wonderful, strong opening statement. Bereshit bara Elohim. I like that. God says, he doesn't begin by trying to explain he's there. He says, I am. That's it. Now, special creation narrative is compromised by theist evolutionists. And let me tell you that most Protestants also, the 400 odd million Protestants, the perhaps just under 400 million Orthodox are very much the majority of them of the same opinion. And that would mean that a very small percentage, and I don't know the percentage, but that a very small percentage of Christians believe in Genesis 1 and 2, the literal account. Now, we're going to run a series soon again on evolution. We have to. The evidence is there. It's not a problem of evidence. It's a problem of people being willing to listen and opening their minds. Now, Charles Darwin was an agnostic. Initially, he was not. He was a member of the Church of England. Wrote a book, The Origin of Species. It's actually a misnomer. He never talked about the origin of species. What he talked about was this, a proposition. The gradual process by which the present diversity of plant and animal life arose from the earliest and the most primitive organisms. That's all he said. That's all he proposed. He never told us where life came from. He never told us how life started, which is the beginning of all organisms, animated or non-animated. He never explained that to us. Because he didn't know. Charles Darwin, when he looked into the microscope and he examined the cellular structure of the plants, he was a botanist, and he looked at that. He could see barely the cell. He could not see what was inside the cell. It was just a blob of plasma to him. He knew nothing about enzymes, hormones. He did anything about organelles, mitochondria, or all the other things. He had no idea what was inside the cell. Now I'm asking you, the man wrote this, over 150 years ago. We have taken a tremendous journey in science. We know so much more. And yet I find so many people revering this man. He was not the first. His grandfather dabbled in it. Actually, I can take you back to the ancient Greek people when it comes to evolution. It's no problem. It's not new. He explained nothing. He did. A theoretical physicist. Now, he was not an evolutionist, as far as I know. He talked about matter and energy. He talked about matter and energy. Now, I want you to see something. He says energy is matter. And for that matter, matter is energy. You cannot have energy without matter. And you cannot have matter without energy. And in the atomic age that we live, we all know about that. Is that correct? Yes, it is. So matter is energy. So in other words, another statement. All energy must have a cause. It must. If they tell me that some 4.5 billion years, I don't know where they get the figure from. Nobody has ever explained that to me. 4.5 billion years ago, there's a big bang. Now, what caused the Big Bang? What was it? Well, it was a massive explosion. Before you have an explosion, you must have an implosion. Can you explain that to me? It doesn't explain where matter came from. It's just a reorganization of matter. And by the way, the Big Bang in observational cosmological sciences has already gone bang. Really, it doesn't hold. It simply doesn't hold. Now, Dr. Anthony Flew, one of the most prominent evolutionists, wrote a number of books, wrote quite a number of books, well known in evolutionary circles. You know why I mentioned him? Because people say, no, they don't say it, but they imply it. They imply it. You know, you have had this. You sit somewhere and the conversation comes to evolution and creation. And there you are, you believe in creation. You believe the Bible. Most of you would, not all, that's okay. And when you say that you believe what the Bible teaches, they look at you as to say, are you all right? They almost infer that you are a bit simple, naive, gullible, maybe indoctrinated. You know? Because evolution is a fact. Because all the evidence is there. So they say. I have never seen a single evidence of it. I say to them, I give them my email address and I say to them, can you send it to me? I missed that. And I'm still waiting. They don't send it because it's not there. Sometimes I get something and it's very easily refuted. You don't have to be clever. Now, this professor is a professor of philosophy. In other words, he was well up with science. And then you look at the philosophical side. Why is it here? Why does this happen? And in 2004, I think it was, he shocked the scientific world because he told them he changed his mind. He now believed in intelligent design, one, but it got worse. He believes and now worships a personal God. What happened to the man's mind? Same information, same intellect. So evolution has nothing, acceptance of evolution, belief in evolution has nothing to do with intellect. And nor has, for that matter, really, you believe in the Bible. You see, by faith we can understand. That is true. But the thing is this. This man said this. What I think the DNA material has done is that it has shown by the unbelievable complexity of the arrangements which are needed to produce life, let's continue, that intelligence must have been involved in getting these extraordinary diverse elements to work together. I couldn't put it better myself. Can you see that? The man stands in awe. He knows. He stands in awe and he says, how can all that complexity come about? Because unless that complexity is there, it's not working. It just isn't working. You got no idea. I could keep you here for hours and take you through the biological realities and the physiological aspects of the processes of life. And I will bore you. You'll probably fall asleep, and I'll try to fight that. But folks, the evidence is so overwhelming. What he is just simply stating here is marvelously correct. In Flu's words, he simply had to go where what? The evidence leads. That is what he had to do. DNA, the nucleic acids. Wonderful, wonderful double helix there. An extraordinary massive molecule with information, so much so, 3 billion words. Marvelous when you look at this. You can break your tongue over that. The deoxyribonucleic acids, you got to say it quickly. But you know, 1953 they discovered this. 1953. They didn't really quite realize what they had discovered. They received a Nobel Prize for it, and rightfully so. It was afterwards. It was afterwards that they realized the complexity. When we run the seminars, I'll talk about some of their thinking afterwards. It's absolutely fascinating. If you look at a cell, a cellular structure, when you have, I gave up my evolutionary belief when I studied the histology, which is really the science of the cells particularly, and discovered the significance of the cell membrane. You know, unless that functions 100%, the life form there dies. It perishes. It can't replicate. The nucleus, where we contain the chromosomes, which ultimately are made up, of course, of the DNA, which again forms the genes again intertwined, form again the chromosomes. It's a massive amount of information. If you look at the metabolism, you know, a cell can only survive if it can attract the nutrients that it needs. Is that correct? Of course, it also has to have the capacity to expel. No, I don't want to go there yet. Let me go back here. It also needs the capacity to expel the toxics that it doesn't need. And I thought I had this here, and that's not quite working, but that's all right. One back. No, I didn't. Is it? Yeah, would I forget? No. Now you understand that's important, isn't it? Because unless it gets the nutrients, it's not going to work. Unless it expels the toxic waste, it's going to die. It's going to perish. So there is a tremendous amount of traffic through that cell membrane. And if you look at that science, the complexity, or how that works, and it must work perfectly or the cell cannot replicate because it perishes. That's very interesting. Also, it's got to have a congenial, suitable surrounding. It's quite extraordinary. Let's have a look at mutations, because anything that comes about in an evolutionary way must be done by multiplication, and it must be done, obviously, by mutation. Now, mutations are a very interesting topic. The mathematical probabilities here I have not expressed because I know you'll forget it, so will I. But I'm just going to lead you through a very simple little exercise. Follow me here. Mutation, either it is detrimental, neutral, or beneficial. Is that correct? Okay, as long as you're happy with that. Now, if it's detrimental, so you get disease, there is no evolution. You would agree on that. If, of course, on the other hand, there is no change, no morphological changes, or otherwise, there is no evolution. We can only go to the beneficial side. Now, there are changes, mutations that can be beneficial. I'll give you one example. There's quite a few. Just imagine you are a little beetle on a very windy place, a rock in the ocean. And you spread your wings, and you are only a beetle. You don't understand that the wind picks you up and blows you in the sea and you drown, because you haven't got flippers, you can't swim. Now, if there's a mutation and I don't have those little wings, what will happen to me? I'll stay on the rock and I survive. Now, this is a biological phenomenon that has been observed. So this loss of information, which is what it was a benefit to the little beetle, and this rock is full of those little darlings that haven't got those wings, because they survive. If there's a throwback, there's a shape of the wing, they start flapping their wing, the strong winds take them, they can't go against the wind, and they perish. You with me here? But what I have here is no new information. I therefore have no evolutionary process, because I need to go from simple to complex. Now, if this new information, if there were to be new information, let's say there was, by the way, that has never been observed. It's theoretical. If there is new information, I could have a changed morphology, meaning a physical change, but I would also need a very, what shall I say, with the additional information, sorry, I got that not well done. Let me just go back. I had it so beautifully set up. So, add information, you have a change. Evolution is a possibility. Not a done deal, but I grant you, if there is a mutation that gives additional information, maybe a pelican will be a postman one day. It could, or a policeman. It could, theoretically. But you know, as I said, unfortunately, there has never been a case of new information. Science has not observed this. They are assuming it must have happened. But that is an assumption. And there's a certain way you can look at that word, too. Professor Werner Gitt is he's retired now, the director of the German Federal Institute of Physics and Technology. This is a post, this is a position that you really must earn. You must come from the highest ranks of science. By the way, this man is a Sabbath keeper. And he does that because he believes in the literal creation of Genesis. Now, this is what he said. All the theories of chemical and biological evolution are based on the premise, have a look at this, that the information solely comes from energy and matter, because we have no intelligence. We have no intelligence, So the only way it could happen, it must be indigenous to matter itself. Do you know what I'm saying here? I'm saying here a blob of matter, imaginary matter, would ultimately develop in a structure that we might recognize. That's the theory. He says, no, that's not. Because he says that's a false theory, because that doesn't happen like that. We have never observed this. You could never explain that away. How could you explain a process if the mechanics, if the dynamics for that process are completely absent? And they are. You cannot accept that information solely comes from energy and matter. It's impossible. This man said so. Again, it's not a matter of intellect. Here is a man, he's an evolutionist. Likeable sort of a chap. I've listened to him a few times. Evolution is promoted by its practitioners as more than a mere science. Evolution is promulgated as an ideology, as a secular religion. He says a full-fledged alternative to Christianity, if you like, with meaning and morality, all the above. I am an ardent evolutionist and an ex-Christian, he says, but have a look at this. But I must admit, evolution is a religion. Because you believe this by faith, not by evidence. And he says this was true of evolution in the beginning, and it is true of evolution still today. It's true. And he's an evolutionist. I've met them like that. They candidly admit what they believe by faith. Study of the nature and behavior of the material and the physical universe based on observation, experiment, and measurement. Have a look at this. Understand that scientific theory are tested, changed, retested until every conceivable objection has been dealt with. Science must be either observable or repeatable by way of experiment. Otherwise it's theory. Now, look at that. What we need is observation. We need experiments. We need measurements, in other words, quantification, qualification. We need predictions. We must know how it works, most certainly. No conceivable objections should be let, and then we can give it a classification of science. I'll go along with this. That's true. So they say, but what about radiometric dating? Oh, I like that topic. And now I wish I had an hour to talk about this. I love those topics. Well, you've all heard of carbon-14 dating. That's only in regards to organic matter. I'm not going to deal with it. And then you have a number of the other, potassium, argon, rubidium, strontium, uranium, lead. There's a whole range of them. Now, they are all based on three main suppositions. And these suppositions are in the area of presuming to know the original state, presuming that we have a closed system that has a set way of developing, and the other one that things changes all at the same time, which is the law of uniformitarianism, which is by no means a proven fact. These are main presumptions. And so what we see here, and is an example, which is Mount St. Helens. Can you tell me when that mountain blew its top? 1980. I want you to see, have a look at that. It looked a bit different. I mean, have you seen the DVD, the video? It is fantastic what happened. The force of it, this is what it looked like afterwards. It was massive. It was massive. A massive eruption. Do you know that some 12 years later they did some radiometric dating? This one is potassium argon. And they got different readings. And the readings were like this, from 350,000 years to 2.8 million years. First, the variation is just absolutely mind-boggling that you can accept that. But we all know it happened 12 years ago. Because you'll have no forming of isotopes before the eruption. And there are many, I have dozens of examples that I have stored where they have done the radiometric dating. And I have argued the radiometric dating with people that believe in evolution. You know, it's marvelous that when you talk to a geologist, they're basically very nice to talk to when it comes to radiometric dating, because they know it doesn't really work. It doesn't. They generally tell a laboratory when they bring the rocks in, well, we would like it to be such and such an age. They do. They do. I know. They told me. Now, the chemical analysis is correct. I'm not debating that. There's nothing wrong in the lab. The prepositions are incorrect, and therefore the conclusions are wrong. It's not evidence. You prove nothing with radiometric dating. It can be an indication when you come to carbon-14, and even then you got to be careful when you go beyond the thousands of years. And there are good reasons for that. Speciation. Are there new species developing, evolving? Yes. Yes. Look at all those cats. They're all cats, but they all look different. You know, I mean, cats, if you're a breeder, they can tell you how long each one of those breeds has been around. They have evolved from the basic parents, no doubt about it. But they all have the same number of chromosomes. They all belong to the same kind. You know, in the book of Genesis, it talks about kinds, not species. And the Hebrew uses the word min, which means to come from. All these can interbreed, you understand? And then ultimately, if the species go too far apart, they can't really breed anymore. You look at that little Chihuahua there and that great whatever, Wolfhound, Dane, whatever it is, don't marry them off because it'll fail. They're not going to make babies. But they're all dogs. No question about it. But you will never find a doggy turning into a pussycat, and vice versa. Do you understand what I'm saying? There is a fixity of kinds. But there is, if you like, a microevolution where species occur. Now, no macroevolution. You see, when it talks about, and this is a painful area if you're an evolutionist, and I found it very painful when I was an evolutionist, because I wish I could point to some objects that could be regarded as definite proof as transitional type. You would think that in a millions of years we would find species preserved. The paleontology should have a smorgasbord of transitional types, gradual transition. You would think so for millions of years, wouldn't you? But I agree with them on this point on one thing. They're still missing. They're still missing. Sometimes I get an email and someone says, oh, there you have it, a transitional type. It isn't. It's just an extinct animal. Wonderful what you can find. But clearly the evidence is missing. We have had no transitions from one kind as such to another. And so, let's listen to him. Firstly, you are nothing. You're here to propagate your selfish genes. Speak for yourself. And there is no higher purpose to life. That's evolution. That's evolution. Maybe we can listen to him for a bit. Have a listen. Listen to this story.
Hello, Professor Dawkins. How are you? I'm Ben Stein. I'm so sorry to keep you waiting. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
You have written that God is a psychotic delinquent invented by mad, deluded people.
No, I didn't say quite that. I said something rather better than that.
Oh, well, please tell us what you said. Please tell us what you said.
Well, I would have to read it from the book.
No, please.
The God of the Old Testament is arguably the most unpleasant character in all fiction. Jealous and proud of it. A petty, unjust, unforgiving control freak. a vindictive, bloodthirsty ethnic cleanser, a misogynistic, homophobic, racist, infanticidal, genocidal, filicidal, pestilential, megalomaniacal, sadomasochistic, capriciously malevolent bully.
So that's what you think of God?
Yeah.
How about if people believed in a God of infinite lovingness and kindness and forgiveness and generosity, sort of like the modern day God? Why spoil it for them? Why not just let them have their fun and enjoy it?
I mean, I don't want to spoil anything for anybody. I write a book. People can read it if they want to.
Why not just let them have their fun and enjoy it? You're a scientist. What's your data?
I think, well, I've had a lot of letters saying that, and I've...
There are 8 billion people in the world, Dr. Dawkins. How many letters have you had?
No, I haven't done that. That's quite true.
Professor Dawkins seemed so convinced that God doesn't exist that I wondered if he would be willing to put a number on it.
Well, it's hard to put a figure on it, but I mean, I'd put it as something like, 99% against or something.
Well, how do you know it's 99% and
don't.
say it's not 97%?
No, I did. You asked me to put a figure on it, and I'm not comfortable putting a figure on it. I think I just think it's very unlikely.
What? But you couldn't put a number on it?
No, of course not.
So it could be 49%.
Well, it would be. I mean, I think it's unlikely, and it's quite far from 50%.
How do you know?
I don't know. I mean, I put an argument in the book.
Well, then who did create the heavens and the earth?
Why do you use the word who? You see, you immediately beg the question by using the word who.
Well, then how did it get created?
Well, by a very slow process.
Well, how did it start?
Nobody knows how it started. We know the kind of event that it must have been. We know the sort of event that must have happened for the origin of life.
And what was that?
It was the origin of the first self-replicating molecule.
Right, how did that happen?
I told you we don't know.
So you have no idea how it started?
No, nor has anybody.
Nor has anyone else. What do you think is the possibility that intelligent design might turn out to be the answer to some issues in genetics or in evolution?
It could come about in the following way. It could be that at some earlier time, somewhere in the universe, a civilization evolved by probably some kind of Darwinian means to a very, very high level of technology and designed a form of life that they seeded onto perhaps this planet. Now, that is a possibility and an intriguing possibility. And I suppose it's possible that you might find evidence for that if you look at the details of biochemistry, molecular biology. You might find a signature of some sort of designer.
Wait a second. Richard Dawkins thought intelligent design might be a legitimate pursuit?
And that designer could well be a higher intelligence from elsewhere in the universe.
Well,
but that higher intelligence would itself have had to have come about by some explicable or ultimately explicable process. It couldn't have just jumped into existence spontaneously. That's the point.
So Professor Dawkins was not against intelligent design, just certain types of designers, such as God.
So the Hebrew God, the God of the Old Testament, he doesn't exist in your view?
Certainly. I mean, that would be a very unpleasant prospect.
And the Holy Trinity of the New Testament, that doesn't
nothing like that.
Do you believe in any of the Hindu gods? Like Vishnu?
How can you ask such a question?
You don't,
how,
right?
how could I? I
Do
mean,
you
why
believe in-
would I, given that I don't believe in any others?
You don't believe in the Muslim God?
No. I mean, why do you even need to ask?
Well, I just wanted to be sure. So you don't believe in any God anywhere?
Any God anywhere would be completely incompatible with anything that I've said
I assume. I'm just wanting to make sure. You don't believe in any God anywhere?
No.
What if after you died, you ran into God? He said, what have you been doing, Richard? I mean, what have you been doing? I've been trying to be nice to you.
Yeah.
I gave you a multi-million-dollar paycheck over and over again with your book, and look what you did.
Bertrand Russell had that point put to him, and he said, something like, "Sir, why did you take such pains to hide yourself?"
But if the intelligent design people are right, God isn't hidden. We may even be able to encounter God through science, if we have the freedom to go there. What could be more intriguing than that?
Now, how do you like that? He does believe in intelligent design. And that intelligent design is not God. It had to be coming about the same way as we have come about, or similar sort of a way. And of course, did they come about? Well, the same as we did. And what about those who planted the seed at their planet or their situation, and so on, and so on. And we have a perpetuity of repetition. Do you understand what I'm saying? You have to believe in eternity, because you have no beginning. An evolutionist has no beginning. They have an end, of course, but they don't have a beginning. Can you see what I'm saying? What he's saying, actually. He said it, I didn't say it. He said it. Can you see the problem? What they have? It's huge. You know, there is a thing that I use a lot when I talk to atheists or evolutionists. God's question in the book of Job. We're going to conclude with this. Well, almost. He said something to Job. He said, "Can you bind the cluster of the Pleiades?" Now the Pleiades is, with the naked eye, you see 8 to 9 suns in the sky on a clear night. There's about 15, 16, 17 of them really. Depends on the strength of the telescope. They are a cluster. They have the constellation of Taurus. And this cluster travels through space at a tremendous speed, but it doesn't expand, which is rather an exception. There appears to be an integrity between them. We know that because we can see that. And then God asked Job, he said, could you lose the belt of Orion? You see, Job demands an answer. He's not charging God, blaming God. He just wants an answer. Why? Why? And so, God never gives him an answer. And if you're looking for certain answers, you may not get them either. But I'll tell you what he's telling you tonight. He is the creator. He is the creator. He said, can you bind the cluster of the Pleiades or loose the belt of Orion? Now, I'd like you to meet a man by the name of Johann Heinrich Mädler, who was the director, or at least observer there in the Berlin Observatory. And he wrote a number of papers. And there in 1846 it was, the German astronomer Mädler noticed that the stars of the Pleiades, the one I was just talking about, had no measurable proper motion relative to each other. In other words, they stayed at the same distance. Are you getting me here? I want you to really observe this. The common proper motion of the Pleiades was a proof that they move as a group in space, and a further hint that they form a physical cluster. That was discovered in what year? Because then they had the measurements to measure it. You needed the instrumentation, you understand. But the book of Job was written by a man by the name of Moses, who lived in the 15th century BC. This was written more, that fact, that question, that suggestion, that statement, that the Pleiades has that integrity, was written 3,500 years ago. Are you with me? You can look at that cluster all your life, and even if you are hundreds of years old, you will never measure the increase or the lack of increase of distance between them. You couldn't tell. This was discovered 166 years ago by this man. And it has been confirmed many times since. Are you with me here? Explain to me that statement. And whenever I say that, and I ask them to explain this to me, it never happens. They can't. They can't. Here, have a look at this. Or lose the belt of Orion. Now, Orion is a constellation. A constellation is a collection of light with a myth or a story about it. You understand that? In fact, if you look at this, this is really the constellation of Orion here. The belt, that's the belt here, of Orion, across the middle here, from west to east, is the Mintaka, Alnilam, and the Alnitak, That's the three stars here. Can you see that? I'm going to put a picture up, and I'm going to see if you can see where they are. Have you ever seen that saucepan upside down? Can you see those three here? Okay, the Mintaka, the Alnilam, and the Alnitak, right there. There you have the right knee, right there. There is the sword, right there. Can you see? The left knee is right there. Can you see that? Orion the hunter beating the daylight out of the lion. That's the story. But now there's something very interesting about that belt, because he says, though apparently close together in the sky, these stars are not members of a cluster like the Pleiades. They are traveling in different directions at tremendous velocity, which we've only have known for the last 150, 160 years, because you can't measure it without their instrumentation. But this was written, the fact that the belt of Orion is expanding, it was written 3,500 years ago. Explain to me how it got there. They can't. I have never had anybody been able to disprove this statement. And by the way, it's not the only statement in the Bible either. We just have time for one. Interesting? Very. All right, folks. Let's have another little story here. I want you to see this one. Have a good look. It takes a few minutes.
The words you are about to experience are true. They will change your life if you let them. For they come from the very heart of God. He loves you, and He is the Father you have been looking for all your life. This is His love letter to you. My child, you may not know me, but I know everything about you. I know when you sit down and when you rise up. I'm familiar with all your ways. Even the very hairs on your head are numbered. For you and have your being. For you are my offspring. I knew you even before you were conceived. You were not a mistake. For all your days are written in my book. I determined the exact time of your birth and where you would live. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. I knit you together in your mother's womb and brought you forth on the day you were born. I have been misrepresented by those who don't know me. I am not distant and angry, but am the complete expression of love. And it is my desire to lavish my love on you, simply because you are my child and I am your father. I offer you more than your earthly father ever could, for I am the perfect father. Every good gift that you receive comes from my hand, for I am your provider and I meet all your needs. My plan for your future has always been filled with hope, because I love you with an everlasting love. My thoughts toward you are countless as the sand on the seashore, and I rejoice over you with singing. I will never stop doing good to you, for you are my treasured possession. I desire to establish you with all my heart and all my soul, and I want to show you great and marvelous things. If you seek me with all your heart, you will find me. Delight in me, and I will give you the desires of your heart, for it is I who gave you those desires. I am able to do more for you than you could possibly imagine, for I am your greatest encourager. I am also the Father who comforts you in all your troubles. When you are brokenhearted, I am close to you. As a shepherd carries a lamb, I have carried you close to my heart. One day, I will wipe away every tear from your eyes, and I'll take away all the pain you have suffered on this earth. I am your Father, and I love you even as I love my Son Jesus. For in Jesus my love for you is revealed. He is the exact representation of my being. He came to demonstrate that I am for you, not against you, and to tell you that I am not counting your sins. Jesus died so that you and I could be reconciled. His death was the ultimate expression of my love for you. I gave up everything I loved that I might gain your love. If you receive the gift of my Son Jesus, you receive me, and nothing will ever separate you from my love again. Come home and I'll throw the biggest party heaven has ever seen. I have always been Father, and will always be Father. My question is, will you be my child? I am waiting for you. Love, your dad, Almighty God.
Folks, I think that said it all. You see, it's not about believing in a creator. It's not just that. It's about believing in a heavenly Father. Amen. It's about believing in a Redeemer. God becoming man incarnate. About this word, the Bible. It's one of the most wonderful gifts that we have received. This book. Can you imagine your life without this book? God makes himself known. And yes, he gets people to talk, to tell, to explain. But this should be your daily study. Forget the finals, the winners and losers. When you read this, there are only winners. Because it is by the reading, by the hearing of the word that your faith will increase. It is by faith that we understand all that we talked about tonight. And yes, we will run series on it. I know most of you, I don't know all of you. Can I urge you one thing? And you do make this decision in the quietness of your mind. Will you commit yourself to your Creator? Because creation was an act of love. And he loves you. There is no greater love than the love that he holds for you. And we need to respond, every one of us. Let's bow our heads. Heavenly Father, we thank you. We thank you for being our Father. For the wonderful love letter that we know as the Bible, your word. We thank you for your Son, for Jesus. It is undescribable how great your love must be that you allowed him to come. And we thank you for his willingness, his desire to do so. Help us to put aside everything else that may interfere with our relationship with you. Help us to choose. Put you first. You have put us first. And we need to respond in kind. Thank you for being there. Thank you for being in existence. Thank you for the evidence to that effect. Thank you for your willingness to show yourself to us in everything that we see around us. And yes, we look forward when we'll see one and another, that we can see you face to face. May that day come soon. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.